Good afternoon. This is Julia Widup with Talk Story TV, and I have with me this morning or this afternoon Reba Merrill, the author of Nearly Famous: Secrets, Lies, and Addictions. And so tell us more about this. It's a memoir, right?
Yes, actually, by writing it, I discovered a lot about myself. I found that I was surprised, I was ashamed, and relieved that I was able to put the story into words because a lot of it was that I never wanted to face any of these things. What I was surprised about is that I had a huge career in Hollywood, and because at least three-quarters of it was I was addicted, and so I had no idea how big the career was. I was ashamed that I was an addict. How can you be an addict if you just like sugar and dessert? I mean, it doesn't make sense. But sugar is as addictive as alcohol, and actually it's as bad as drugs. But I was relieved that I found out what was wrong with me and that I could deal with it. I am in a 12-step program. I have been in a 12-step program for sugar addiction, or what we call overeating, because that's what the sugar was doing to me. And in December, see, we addicts always know when we come into a 12-step program. In December 17th, it'll be 23 years.
23 years. Wow. And you've been in the 12 step for Overeaters Anonymous.
Correct. I also weighed 209 pounds when I went in.
Wow. So it made a huge difference.
That's an interesting word, huge. Yes, huge personality changes, huge weight changes. I mean, first of all, I just went into this Overeaters Anonymous program because they had a great diet and it was free, unlike Weight Watchers. So I went and I got this diet, and the first, I was really unprepared for what this diet was going to be, because what they did the first moment that I committed that I was going to try this program was they took away the two most glorious things in my life: sugar and white flour. At this point, I was not drinking anyway. I had done early morning television and discovered that if I had a glass of wine at dinner, I couldn't hold my eyes open. So I stopped drinking all by myself. But I never stopped sugar. Sugar was always in my life. And when I worked on television, because I did morning talk shows, my life consisted of, I'm ashamed, but cigarettes, coffee, and sugar.
All of
Just little.
that.
And I stayed really, really thin. What's interesting about a sugar addiction, unlike alcoholism, a lot of times alcoholics stay very thin because they drink and don't eat and usually pass out. Well, what I was doing is I was eating and eating regular meals and then adding on top of that huge amounts of sugar, and I did pass out like a drunk. But I want you to know how clever I was about passing out. I should tell you that addicts are very clever people, okay? Is that I never did this in front of my husband. Not only was I a secret eater, but the passing out, we had a commuting marriage at the time, and while he was out of the state, I would get huge bags of sugar and sit in my den in the house in Malibu on the beach and proceed to eat a huge bag, and wait till I tell you what kind of addict I was. I only ate cheap chocolate-covered peanuts. I didn't even eat the high-class sugar. I just ate the junk and then would pass out. And about 2 hours later, I would come to, there was still sugar and candy in the bag, and eat the rest, and by then it's 11 o'clock at night, and I would go to bed.
Wow. You didn't end up with diabetes?
That is the miracle. That is the miracle. I did this for 7 years. Or what I like to say is that sugar held me hostage for 7 years. And it wasn't until I got help, I didn't even know what was wrong with me. I have to say this, I thought I was crazy. I thought I was crazy because I could not put down the food and I could not put down the sugar. It's like I had no control over who I was. And at the same time, I'm working for everybody in Hollywood. One of the big secrets was it wasn't that I was fat. You have to understand something. Oprah was fat. Nobody saw me when I did these interviews. I did them off camera for the studios, and it didn't matter what I looked like. Nobody hired me for what I looked like. They hired me for my brains. And so, and my behavior, which was outrageous, was never in front of the studios. That was a big secret I kept. My behavior outside of when I was working was atrocious. I
But,
fired
but
people.
most people would never consider eating sugar to be outrageous behavior.
Exactly. But it made me crazy. First of all, I will tell you, I'm a type A personality. Therefore, I'm entitled to be a little over the top. But the over the top became screaming, yelling. I was filled with rage. I was always angry. And this is what's surprising, because I'm looking back now at what was going on, is that I had, as far as what the outside world thought, everything. I had this gorgeous home in Malibu on the beach. I had a German red convertible in the carport. I was working for most of the studios. I was like what they call in Hollywood the flavor of the month. And here's how I looked at that time in my life. I didn't have enough work. I didn't have enough food. I didn't have enough money. I didn't have enough love.
That's how
I wasn't happy.
you totally weren't seeing reality.
No, and I was not happy at all. I was miserable. So when I got into the 12-step program, and this is how I found out I was an addict, because I would have never associated sugar with addiction, all right? Once they took the sugar away, and I have to say this, the night before I went into the 12-step program, I ate a half a cake.
Oh my God.
I ate it like a lady. Okay, I cut it, I sliced it, I wrapped it up because it was a pull apart honey cake. See, I can still remember 23 years ago what I ate. And then I finished it and then I sliced it again, rewrapped it, ate it. And so I go to the 12-step program and I am loaded with sugar. So I decide to make the commitment to go, and I take what they told me I could eat on this, what they called the gray sheet, and I thought this was the greatest moment in my life. I had 3 days of having the most wonderful time. This food was great because it's my food, and all of a sudden on the fourth day, I start to detox. Now, I didn't know the word at the time. What was happening is that after I ate dinner, about an hour later, I was starving. I started to get headaches. I had chills, and I cried. And it went on for 21 days, every night. So what I did is I followed what the food plan was. After dinner, the house in Malibu, we had a lot of different floors, and I got myself away from the kitchen floor. For the most part, I just climbed into bed, pulled the covers over my head, and just prayed, please, God, let me get through till tomorrow. And then about 25 days into the program, all of a sudden, all of that went away, just like it came. I found out, I guess I was an addict because what I was doing was detoxing. And I know you're going to laugh at me, but who detoxes from sugar? But obviously, I did.
Whatever made you think that it might be an addiction? Why did you even consider overeaters?
Well, because, oh God. Okay, so I'm working in Hollywood, and I had this job that took me to the jungles of Brazil for a movie. And the film company built a small village, and so we had to share the water. So all the women had to take showers together, 2 at a time had to take showers because there wasn't enough for everybody. And so the woman I was working for, who would be called the unit publicist on the film, We took showers together, and I don't know if you have any idea of what a fat lady looks like. We'll skip that the bosom hangs, but everything else hangs. And so the belly hangs over the thighs. I mean, it's really gross. And we're taking the shower, and she's skinny. And I said, oh my God, if I could only look like you, I did da 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 da. And she says, oh, I go to a 12-step program for food. And that's how I found out about it. Never thinking I needed a 12-step program, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm from a generation that 12 steps and women meant that they were tramps because they must have been drinking. And then later on, if they did drugs, they were probably hookers. So I had a real attitude problem when she said it. But she said to me, oh, do they have a food plan? And that's the only thing I heard. Well, because I wasn't an addict. I mean, I knew how to diet, and I was really looking for a real food diet as opposed to having my food sent in or starving. I was very good at starving. I was a yo-yo person. And so I went. I knew I wasn't an addict. I was just going for the food plan.
How amazing. I've never heard of anyone detoxing from sugar, but it sounds familiar.
But all of us are like that. We just didn't have the words that said we were detoxing from sugar. I wouldn't have known what was happening to me until I talked to somebody and said, look at this. I'm crying, I have a headache, I've got chills, I'm miserable. And somebody took those actions and said, you're detoxing. So I have to tell you, there is no way that consciously I will put sugar in my body. I do eat, and from 23 years ago to today, I have a lot more options. There's a lot of sugar-free foods that never, we had nothing. We had Sweet and Low and we had Equal. Well, now we have Stevia, we have Splenda. I mean, there's lots of ways to eat and keep some control on the sugar. I have to tell you something, I've kept most of the weight off. I didn't keep it all off because I really lost an awful lot of weight. And I'm going to probably end up having to tell you my age, but I was not young. So therefore, as I kept getting older, it was very difficult to maintain the weight. Overall, from 209 pounds, I weigh 152 today.
Oh,
and I think I should tell you that I'm 78.
What? Oh, you look fabulous.
Well, I think it's because I don't have sugar. Sugar does really bad things. It makes you wrinkle. Alcohol makes you wrinkled. I don't drink. And I'm not anybody really special. What it was and what makes this 12-step thing work is that I saw somebody who walked ahead of me lose 100 pounds and keep it off. And I said, if she can do it, I can do it. I lost over 60 pounds, and I really got too thin. I know that's difficult to say, but I was in my 50s by then, and if you get too thin, you really pay the price on your face. And I want to say this. In my career, I had the pleasure of interviewing Lauren Hutton. And she said to me, a woman has to be smart as she gets older and keep those 10 pounds on because therefore her face will look really good. And let's face it, when you walk into a room, that's the first thing they see. And nobody cares when you leave what they're seeing. And so I've lived by that. When I worked in television, which was, here's the numbers. It was 30 years ago, and I was 20 pounds lighter.
Well, yeah. Have you heard that those artificial sweeteners make you gain weight also? I heard that.
Well, I'm very careful how much I use of it, and I did stop drinking the diet sodas. I never thought I could stop. But I make sun tea every day on my windowsill, and I drink it without any sugar in it or sweetener. When I want a sugar fix, I get it from fruit. I know all kinds of fruit secrets, If you cook your fruit, it heightens the sugar content, but it's the sugar you can process with your body.
Uh-huh.
And if by accident I get, we can have a product. I read labels. That's very important. If sugar is fifth in the label, then I can have it.
Okay, because it's low enough.
Yes, but most of the time it's first.
I
And in
know.
they call it, they have a lot of names for it. And it, it's, it'll just do you in. It did me in. I can only speak for myself. But I talk to all my friends that I still go to. I go to three meetings a week, and we talk about this. And we all admitted that we never thought we were addicts. We just thought we would like to eat. And what's wrong with eating? It's a very social activity.
Oh,
You have
yes.
friends over, and nobody thinks anything of eating. Um, Drinking, a lot of times you get out of control with behavior. Now, when I had too much sugar in my system in a social situation, most of the time, depending how social it was, if it was social through Hollywood, I just buttoned up and didn't talk.
Okay, so you never
But
got out of control.
exactly, because I knew, and my family were the brunt of this huge mood swings. I mean, and let me tell you something. When we made plans to go to dinner and the restaurant was crowded and not honoring the reservation, I would go ballistic to the point that I was an embarrassment to not only my children but my grandchildren. I could not control how I felt. I couldn't put a label on it. I couldn't say I was hypoglycemic. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just thought I was crazy.
And you blame it now on the sugar addiction.
I don't have to blame it. I know it.
You
I
know,
know that's what it is. And I'm not going back at this point. And I, I I'm not going back because I like the way I look. They tell you this. You go into the program for sanity, and I'm the first one to tell you I went into the program for vanity, got my sanity, and then after I got it, I decided I'd keep the vanity. It was a much easier way to live.
well, you do look fabulous. I couldn't believe it when you told me your age.
I have to admit, I finally admitted it at 75. I came out of the closet. I worked until I was 74 in Hollywood. How's that one? That's because the lies in the book, well, one of the things that I learned to do, I learned to lie about my age. Actually, I just did it in decades. I just took 10 years off and just prayed. No, nobody really cared as much about my age as they do to women in Hollywood who are really on screen. I really was off camera, and my interviews played in 60 countries, and where my voice was, the language of the country would go where my voice was. So I had designed this piece of programming so that it would slip right into somebody's already established program, like whether it went to the news or it went into an entertainment show. And I came up with that in 1983 because I was fat. I was getting fat. And I was old because I had been fired from a television station for my age. And I wanted to work. And I realized if you couldn't see me, I could get old. I never thought I would get fat because but the first year of actually hitting it in Hollywood, hitting it big, I gained 40 pounds the first year because I was scared. I was the
Stress.
first. Well, the stress was part stress, but the first thing that happened is that at a very big studio, and I wanted to work, and I had not worked for 18 months after having 17 rejections. Nobody wanted me. Um, I get offered all the work I can handle, and all I have to do is have sex with the guy 3 times a week. And in my entire career, in working in local television, winning an Emmy, no one ever equated work with sex. And that's where the sugar started. I think subconsciously, which I didn't want to admit, that I would just put on a little bit of weight and nobody would want me.
And that would, yes, I think that happens a lot to women. They're just trying to protect themselves with a little armor.
Exactly, exactly. And I did. But then when I did hit, I was already into the sugar and the stress of having to please. Look, the people I worked for were power players. They sat behind a desk at a studio. They made a lot of money. The demands were you have to give your very best, or or we can find 10 other people to give your job to. And so I worked really, really hard. And then at the height of my disease, and I say it like this, and I had been doing it from 84 to 87. I was just making tons of money, and I was busy. And that's when I started the passing out. And I think in looking back, and the book helped, is that the stress overwhelmed me to the point that I was scared to death I was going to lose everything I had, because I had a lot. And it was this spiral. I worked hard to get it. I got it, couldn't appreciate it, and then all of a sudden, I'm scared to death I'm going to lose it. And the truth of the matter is, if I kept going, which I did lose it. I lost a lot. But you're looking at a lady that got a second chance.
And you saved your life.
Yes, and when I get a second chance, I have a year of program under my belt. And this time, when I take on Hollywood, I'm grateful. That's a word that was never in my vocabulary. Let me tell you just a little bit. I never did anything nice for anybody without a payoff from me. I never cared about anybody. And I never said nice things. Either I said nothing or I bitched about them behind their back. When I get a second chance, and I've had a year of being in a 12-step program where I learned how to be grateful, where my temper had lessened, where I was learning how not to react. I was a reactor. I was a people pleaser. I still try to please people, but everything now is in a little bit more controlled effort. I know when my temper gets off. I know how to apologize, especially in my family. And even, I'm not working anymore, but I do lectures on cruises. And when I make a mistake, I own it. I apologize. This is me. This is what I've learned. And it has made my life free, that I can live a more authentic person, and I am what I am. I told you my weight. I told you how old I am. You'll notice my hair is not quite real. It's only a little phony. and this is what I am.
You're doing great. You're a hero.
Thank you.
I would
like to leave you with something, if you wouldn't mind, that I wrote.
Okay.
It's called The 10 Things I Learned in Hollywood. And I really owe this to David Letterman, because he showed me that when you learn 10 things, you start at the top, number 10. I have to read them because I wouldn't memorize this, but 10. When dealing with incompetent people with studio power, take your name off the project. Now just remember, everything that I'm going to read to you, I have been confronted with. Number 9, mean people don't single you out. They're mean to everyone. Number 8, don't take on someone who is sleeping with their powerful boss.
Oh, right.
Number 7, make contacts first and then develop your talent. In Hollywood, it's really important of who you know so that you can keep working. Number 6, an inflated ego is hazardous to your health, your marriage, and your career. Number 5, since Hollywood is high school with money, try to stay away from the mean girls. Number 4, don't burn bridges. Keep your options open to yourself. Number 3, a successful career does not guarantee happiness. Number 2, always say yes, even if you mean no. And here's the number one thing I learned working in Hollywood. Learn to lie as part of your lifestyle.
I'm sure that has a lot to do with it in Hollywood. Wow. This has been a fascinating interview. Thank you so much for being
My
here.
pleasure.
And I'm looking forward to, are you writing a guest blog for us or not?
Uh, I have to think about it. But I'll talk to Laurel and I will find out what she thinks I should do.
Okay.
Um, I'm making a lot of changes in my life. I think I'm going to cut back on, I'm doing 4 cruises a year lecturing, where I think I want to pull back. I really would like to write a fictional story about a woman that works on local television. And that's what I'm looking forward to, because I should tell you how I wrote my book. I wrote it with Dragon Speak. I just talked it into the computer.
I love it. I'm planning to do that same thing.
And since you know how old I am, I can tell you that I am not a generation of her thumbs. So for me to send, a zillion messages, I was very frustrated using the computer. And so somebody told me about Dragon Speak. And it's really fascinating. As I would talk into it, I would watch my words come up on the screen. And the only problem is that a lot of times on proper names, they get it wrong. And when I see that, I'll say it's really spelled and then spell it out. And also you have to learn to say period, comma, new paragraph. I didn't do that the first time around. I'm getting smarter. I do it now.
What a wonderful, I am really wanting a Dragon Speak now because I thought that should work that way.
It's great. It really is great. Thank you for having me, Julia. You know something? I really enjoyed this. And I wish you great success in your future endeavors.
Thank you very much. Have a good time on your cruise.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.